What if the reason you're not wealthy has nothing to do with your skills, your education, or the economy? What if the real wall standing between you and financial freedom is invisible? And what if that wall was built inside your mind before you were even old enough to understand money? Because here's the truth almost nobody talks about. Most people don't have a money problem. They have an emotional problem that looks like a money problem. And today we're going to break that wall down brick by brick. Let's start with something that sounds almost too simple to be powerful. Money is emotional, not just logical, not just mathematical, deeply personally emotional. And yet, every time we talk about building wealth, we jump straight to strategies, budgets, investments, income streams. We treat money like a spreadsheet problem, when for most people, it's a wound they've never looked at directly. Psychologists call this concept money scripts. These are the unconscious beliefs you formed about money when you were a child. Beliefs that were written into your mind through what you heard, what you witnessed, and what you felt in moments tied to money. Maybe growing up you heard the phrase, "we can't afford that," said over and over, said with stress, said with shame. Your young mind didn't just hear words, it made a decision. It concluded, money is something we don't have. Money is something other people have. Money causes tension. And that conclusion became a lens, a permanent filter through which you see every financial opportunity, every salary negotiation, every bill that arrives in the mail. Take the story of a man named Daniel, a graphic designer in his early 30s living in Manchester. By every external measure, Daniel was talented. His clients praised him constantly. But every time he sat down to raise his rates, something froze inside him. His chest tightened. His palms went cold. He described it not as fear but as guilt, like he didn't deserve to ask for more. Where did that guilt come from? It came from watching his father work 2 jobs and still apologize to the family every Christmas for not being able to do more. Daniel had absorbed something dangerous without realizing it. Wanting more money is selfish. Struggling quietly is noble. That belief, buried beneath years of adult logic, was quietly destroying his financial life. And the terrifying part, he had no idea it was there. Here's a psychological truth that will make you uncomfortable if you sit with it long enough. For many people, staying financially stuck feels safer than becoming financially free. That sounds insane on the surface. Who would choose to stay broke? But we're not talking about a conscious choice. We're talking about something far more subtle, the link between your financial situation and your sense of identity. Think about it this way. If you grew up in a working-class household and every person you loved, every voice that shaped you, every story that made you feel belonging was anchored in the struggle, then success starts to feel like abandonment, not just ambition, betrayal. There's a term for this in psychology called upper limiting. It describes the invisible ceiling people create for themselves, not because they lack ability, but because somewhere deep inside, they believe that rising too high will cost them something they're not ready to lose: their community, their identity, the sense of being relatable. Let me tell you about a woman named Simone. She grew up in a close-knit neighborhood in Philadelphia, tight family, loyal friends, everyone knew everyone. By her late 20s, Simone had built a small online business that was genuinely taking off. But every time revenue started climbing, every time real money was within reach, she would unconsciously self-sabotage. She'd undercharge clients, she'd take on too many free projects, she'd find reasons to delay. When she finally worked through this in therapy, the core belief came to the surface. If I become successful, I won't belong anymore. She wasn't afraid of failure. She was afraid of distance, afraid that money would separate her from the people who made her feel whole. And so she kept herself exactly at the level where she felt safe, even if that level was a level of quiet financial pain. Here's what's important to understand. Recognizing this pattern is not weakness. It is, in fact, the first act of real financial courage. Because you cannot fight an enemy you refuse to see. The question isn't, why can't I make more money? The question is, what part of me believes I shouldn't? Now let's talk about what it actually looks like when someone faces these emotional blocks and moves through them anyway. Because this isn't just theory. There are real documented moments in the lives of extraordinarily successful people, where the emotional turning point came before the financial one. Consider the story of Howard Schultz, the man who transformed Starbucks from a small Seattle coffee shop into a global empire. Schultz grew up in a housing project in Brooklyn, New York. His family had almost nothing. When he was 7 years old, his father broke his ankle at work. There was no insurance, no safety net, no backup plan. His family fell into a financial collapse that scarred every single one of them. Schultz has spoken openly about how that memory never left him. The image of his father, a proud, hardworking man lying on the couch, defeated, helpless. For most people, that image would have become a ceiling, a reason to play it small, to stay safe, to avoid the kind of exposure that could lead to that same kind of fall. But Schultz made a different decision. Not a strategic one, an emotional one. He decided that the feeling he witnessed in that apartment, that feeling of being unprotected, unseen, left behind, was something he never wanted another person to experience at the hands of a company he built. That emotional wound didn't block him. He turned it into a compass. He built a company where hourly employees had health insurance at a time when almost no one in that industry offered it. He built a culture around dignity, around the idea that every single worker deserved to feel like they mattered. And ironically, by healing the emotional wound through his work, he built one of the most valuable brands in human history. That's the pattern. That's what separates the people who get swallowed by their emotional blocks from the people who build something extraordinary on top of them. It's not the absence of pain, it's the decision about what to do with it. The question Schultz implicitly asked, and the question every person who has truly broken through their emotional limits has had to answer is this: can I use what hurt me to build something that helps others, and by doing so free myself? Most people never ask it. The ones who do change everything. You can learn every strategy. You can study every investment principle. You can follow every framework, read every book, watch every video. But if deep inside your subconscious mind, in the part that runs your decisions before your logic even wakes up, you believe that money is dangerous, that wanting wealth is greedy, that people like you don't get to live that way, then your behavior will always circle back to confirm that belief. Because the human mind does not work to make you successful. It works to make you consistent. It will protect the story it knows, even if that story is breaking you. This is why lottery winners who grew up without emotional wealth so often lose everything within years. Not because they're irresponsible, but because their internal emotional set point, their invisible financial identity, pulls them back to what feels familiar. Familiar doesn't mean good. Familiar just means known. And here's what the neuroscience confirms. The brain can be rewired. The emotional patterns that were written in childhood can be examined, questioned, and gradually replaced, not by ignoring them, not by positive thinking your way past them, by doing the uncomfortable, courageous work of sitting with them, asking where they came from, understanding that the child who formed those beliefs was doing the only thing they could, trying to survive, trying to make sense of a world they didn't control, and then gently, firmly releasing those beliefs from their job, because they were never meant to last a lifetime. They were emergency responses, worn long past their expiry date. The real wealth journey doesn't start with your bank account. So where does this leave you? Not with a checklist, not with a 7-step plan, just with one honest question to take with you. What is the earliest memory you have that taught you something about money? Not what you intellectually believe, what you felt, what you saw, what conclusion a younger version of you quietly drew without anyone knowing about what money meant and what kind of person deserved it. Because that moment, however small it seems, is likely still speaking in your financial decisions today, in the opportunities you avoid, in the risks you won't take, in the prices you set too low, and the help you refuse to ask for. The work of wealth isn't just external. It is deeply, fundamentally internal. And the people who understand that, who are willing to look inward with the same intensity they bring to spreadsheets and strategies, those are the people who build lives that last. Not because they were smarter, not because they were luckier, because they were honest. Honest about their fears, honest about their patterns, honest about the invisible walls they'd been walking into their whole lives, and finally decided to name your wall, study it, understand it, and then, with everything you have, walk through it. Because on the other side isn't just money. On the other side is a version of you that finally feels free.